All right, well, I am back out here in the garage. We are now working on, what am I working on? Oh yeah, I'm doing a supercharger bracket right now. I'll be doing the pistons here in a little bit, but right now, I am about to start welding this. I've got everything in place. Got all the brackets where they need to be tacked together right now. This one won't be getting tacked together until I get the supercharger sitting here with the other brackets on it over there. And it's all marked and ready to go. So there'll be a little bit more of this done here in just a minute. Alright, so I've got it mounted. Now it's temporarily mounted. It's spot welded. And the factory timing cover fits. I had to put a tiny little notch in it right there. See if I can zoom in on it. Tiny little notch right there. And then back here, there was just that little bit back there I had to trim off. And there you have it. Now I have left myself the option to come off of here to here with some sort of a additional brace, or from here over to that bolt hole, depending on how the stress works out. But I think with the triangulated gusset there, along with the braces on the bottom across, I got one more weld in right there, and here and here, it's very solid. There's not a whole lot going to happen here as far as vibration. I'm just being more cautious than anything. I think I'm already overbuilt it, but I would rather have the option in case I need it. So next thing to do is drill the pulley, or drill the new pulley out. I've got chilling over there, a little 2-incher, and a 17mm drill bit to open her up. That way we can have all the boost. I also have the pistons ready to go. I have the holes cleaned up, ready for the wrist pins to go in. And they're in the freezer. So that'll be coming here in a minute as well. Alright, so now I'm getting on to the charge pipe for the air cleaner box, or what's going to be the carb hat. This isn't going to make sense until I'm done, so I'm going to kind of explain it as I go, and then you'll kind of see it take form. So what we got here is, this will mount. This originally would have pointed here somewhere like this. Tell you what, hang on. Alright, this should be a little bit better angled. Alright, so what I got here is I have opened the whole bottom of one of these and rotated it so it points this way. And originally it would have pointed over the engine this direction. Since we have supercharger stuff, it has to go this way. One other thing I'm doing is I have one other place I need to secure back here in this corner. I have another sleeve I'm going to weld in back here, and this screw will be accessed from inside because it will not interfere with this, but you'll see why in a second. So what I got going on here is a whole lot of welding and a whole lot of grinding and a whole lot of cutting yet, but this will sit down like that. I then have the middle part of one of these cut out, and what this does is this going to go down on those. Come on, cold fingers. Like so. This is a pre-measured distance from the bottom of the sleeve to the top of the sleeve. And what this does is this gives me the distance I need for the airflow, but then this distance here was also calculated for the top of the air filter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to weld all of this enclosed. So this will be like a boost hat or a carb hat built inside of a factory air filter housing. Down in the bottom here it gets real wide, but this is a 2.5 inch inlet, and rather than just let the air flow through this and come out wherever all these seams are at, I have a 2.5 inch exhaust pipe that is fit in from the bottom. And I will flip this over and show you here in a minute what I've done, but I've basically cut the whole bottom out of this for exactly this to fit tight. And then once it gets back to this wide part, I'm going to split it and I'll kind of widen it out to blend it in down here. But what's going to happen is, of course, we need a blow-off valve. And there was a hot air door that used to operate here, and since it's going this way, it doesn't need to operate that way anymore because there's no hot exhaust under it. So what I've done is I've taken I have a stock one here to show you. I've taken that off, and when this is up inside there, I'm going to have this cut open, and this part here is going to sit right here. Okay, and that's where this fun part comes in. This is our blow-off valve. It's going to mount right here on top of this, but it's going to poke through, and it's going to take the place of that. I'm going to paint the stuff on the top black to blend it in. So what we end up with is we have not only a charge hat built in up here, but we now have a built-in blow-off valve. And when this is all said and done, the whole thing's incognito. Unless you know you're looking at a blow-off valve, you wouldn't know. This also gives me a great entry point for my charge pipes coming off the intercooler in the front of the car. The inlet will come over into the fender well and feed cold air from either the fender or behind the bumper, where the cold air would have normally been directed around the battery and into the air filter housing through the tube. And then the outlet of the supercharger obviously will come down and go through the core support into the intercooler. So that's what I've got going on here right now.
there's a right way to prepare a Pulley sandwich. The traditional way. By traditional, we mean the same way the Culver family used to prepare it in their Wisconsin supper clubs over 40 years ago.
Well,
we start with the
about to see exactly what is behind a 1982 only Pontiac bumper.
Just hot and flaky,
I believe this is a full bumper,
so good.
just like the Chevys had from 81 down.
North Atlantic cod fillet dinner or sandwich. Welcome to Delicious.
And I believe I'm right.
Art to handcrafting a rich,
I sure am.
Culver's concrete mixer. Start by scooping
I don't know if the camera's picking that up or not down there, but I'll get it up here. You can see it's just a continuation of the trim into that corner down there. So there's no extra holes. It's just like the rubber trim that goes around. So these caps on the end are just trim caps. And instead of going to the new shorter bumpers in 82 like Chevy did, Pontiacs carried these wraparound chrome bumpers one more year, which is why they got these weird extra wide specific 82 caps. Ain't that cool? Alright, well, I'm going to pause this right now. And the missus are celebrating her new job, and there's Red Lobster in there for me to eat, so I'm going to go and do that. I'm going to come back, I'll explain a few things that you see that might be a little different in this, and I'm going to go over what we're going to do differently with the bumpers.
Did you know 20% of stars have planets orbiting them capable of sustaining life?
How did you know that? You must...
Well, as I'm sure you see, I've got majority of the front end off. Started to remove the fenders. These bolts here at the end of the fenders, they have a nut on the bottom side that has to be accessed from inside in here. I just got to put a wrench up in there and pull that back out, and then all of the top side bolts are out on both sides. And there is an additional one here, as well as, depending on the year, the later model cars have a couple up here that hold the chin spoiler to the fender. And then these earlier cars have the panel down here, since the fender extends all the way down, and there's two 10mm there. After that, it's an inner fender well that comes undone. There is a fender bolt down here at the bottom of this fender, and then there's the one down here and the one here that come in from inside the car. And then of course on this side you have the antenna that you have to take out once that drops down. If you unplug it from the radio in the back, there's a grommet here at the firewall. You just work the grommet out of the firewall, and then the whole thing pulls off and comes out with the fender. Something else you guys might be eyeballing is the Miata Battery. Miata Battery. Yes, that's a U13 lawn tractor battery, but between the high torque starter, little high torque gear reduction mini starter, and the fact that this is a tiny little engine, that's plenty, especially with the big battery cables I'm going to be putting on it. And it weighs, I think, about half of what that one does, and it puts the weight behind the actual center line. And this is technically a factory battery location, just not a factory battery location for a US spec T-body, but there it is. GM did put them there, and there's nothing in the rules that says you can't put it here. It's still under here. It'll still have a legal hold down. We've just moved it. Excuse me. And then of course there's the angle of the snorkel, and this will make a lot more sense once the intercooler goes in up here and I get all the piping done. But I'm going to go ahead and start ripping the rest of this apart that I don't need, get everything out of my way, and then I'll probably start mocking up for the intercooler and the piping. And here before too long, probably going to start getting down in here, because I'm going to start getting everything ready to test fit for the supercharger actually in the car, and the alternator the new alternator location actually in the car. And here before too long, we'll be installing that. And the pulley, obviously. I gotta get belts. There's a few other things over there. For the most part though, you're seeing what we're getting. Getting the engine done, we're getting the supercharger done, we're getting the rear end done, and we're getting the car prepped. And then of course, you know, the suspension, there's the big sway bars and things. So we're getting there. I'm going to go ahead and set you on the tripod here and get to work. Tell you what, we'll just fast forward all the good stuff, because for the most part you're just going to see all of this become fenderless, and then we're going to mount some of these other new tires, and you'll see it up on jack stands here in just a minute. But I'll explain to what you're missing. I just feel like I can't time lapse enough of this because I'm going to have so many hours in this. I'm already way behind, so there it is. One thing I definitely wanted to show you guys. See if I can get it in the camera here. Okay, so as you get in the car, and this will be opposite on that side, you have your kick panel. Okay, you remove the two screws that hold your kick panel on and remove it, and there's a screw or a bolt, 10mm bolt that goes through down here. But the ones that suck are the ones that are actually right here that go up for the top. That one over there is not too bad because you can see it up under the dashboard behind the glove box. This one's a pain because it's up in here with the wiring. You can see where my, I don't know if you can see where my ratchet's at, right up there, going through, but that's where it's at. It's not terribly difficult to get to, and some cars have a piece of sound deadening over top of it, as much as this one did. It's just a little piece of tarboard right there, comes off. So that's how you get to those bolts. And I'll address that again in a daytime video on Aaron's car when we get to it. So, alright, well, I think I've hit pretty close to a stopping point tonight. I got the entire front end of that car apart, and I've got everything ready to go in place of some accessories once I get them pulled out of there. What I'm going to be doing here with these is these are going to get welded, and then these are going to get hacked off. That saves a couple of pounds here, both sides there. And I'm going to do some other things with the bumper, especially the front. There's going to be some airflow stuff up here that needs to be done, but there's a lot of extra bumper that doesn't need to be there. I think the last time I shaved one, I think I got almost 5 pounds out of it, so we'll see how it goes. But the I have to relocate the outer Headlight, I'm tired. The outer headlight adjusters need to be moved in for the round headlights. Bug. I don't know where this bug came from. It's flying right in front of me. Rather distracting. And I've got to get the, I gotta get the mounts made for that. I won't know exactly where I'm putting that until I get the chin spoiler up here and I get the bumper and the modified brackets back up here, because I don't know if I'm gonna want this down here and the tubes to go under, because if that's the case, I've got to sink this down a little bit to clear the bumper brackets, or I've got to do something different with the bumper brackets just to clear the tubes, which is doable, but the holes are going to be roughly about where that thing's at, and because the factory gave me one roughly in about that spot there, and rather than making a tube that kind of snakes up there, I'd rather just go straight in on a 90. So thinking centering it about here. Yeah, somewhere in here. But that gets me right in between them areas. It gets me a good place to put 90s. Then I have to build some ductwork around it, but that's what that roll of aluminum right there is, and the rivets. Because I'm also going to be doing not only a little bit of fitment here to direct air through where it needs to go, but there's some areas in here that need filled, because I want all that air going right through the cooling stack. This thing may end up with an oil cooler on it at some point, because it may really need it. And I want to try and do something shroud wise with this side of the fan, because there is no shroud. It has been okay up thus far, but we're going to end up with a lot more underhood heat. Okay, so we've got the battery in place. I've got to get the tray moved, or well, a tray made for up there, be it a little strap and a hold down, maybe all it is, and then that one's going to go away. I may also make this kit to try and clear this, but I don't know if that's going to be a possibility just because of the amount of limited space, but I will see. I may be able to bring the supercharger up. I may also be able to bring it back just a hair and then use a deeper set pulley to get me the offset needed on one for a production model car rather than a race car. So we'll see how that goes. That's a little ways off. We still have to test that one, make sure that that's not going to break or do anything weird. So I'm getting ready to take that off of there before all the final weld happens. I got to take it off of there and bolt it in here in place of this to make sure I have all my clearance for my tubes and everywhere. I need to run everything, and then we'll go from there. I'm going to bring, obviously that thing sits here and the inlet's on the top. The inlet's going to come off the top of that supercharger over and feed out of here, be it down here or somewhere here-ish. And then the outlet obviously will come up and out this hole through the intercooler back in the core support tomorrow, because I can't drill holes tonight. It's a little late. My neighbors would shoot me. But through there and then into what is about to be the finished airbox. An incognito boost hat, if you will. I did discover that the hood line is going to be an issue with the blow-off valve being on the top, so it will have to go underneath, and there's not a whole lot I can do about that, although I can still bring it down some to meet up with where I need to go here to kind of keep bends to a minimum, and if that's the case, I may run into enough hood clearance to run the blow-off valve in the old Thermac location, because that would really set off that air filter, the air filter housing, because it's supposed to look as stock as possible, and those that wouldn't know that's a blow-off valve would think that's just a huge Thermac on the end of that. So that's the idea, just for fun. Nothing, we're not really seriously trying to hide it. Obviously the supercharger is going to be there and whining like crazy, so not a whole lot we can do about that. But opening the hood, that is the first thing you're going to see is all the OE looking stuff, and that's kind of how I do things and kind of how I like things to look. And of course we've got some good shocks on this thing now. We're getting ready to put the sway bars in. Let me show you, let me see if I can get this down off the shelf here. Causing a big old crash. Parts everywhere here. Oops. I'm gonna do it. Alright. Look at that, one-handed. I'm going to show you the thickness difference in these sway bars. If you'll come with me down here on the floor. I'll put these bad boys side by side. I don't know how well that is picking up in the camera there, but in person there's a significant thickness difference there. But I have to mount that after I take these old mounts out because the bolt spacing is too narrow. I have to put wider bolts in, or a wider bolt spacing in here, and then mount the new frame mounts, which will take up the place of the factory stuff that's in there. See if I can get a better look on this side. A little more light over here. But it's just too narrow of a bolt spacing for that to fit in there. So I got to put a couple. I'm gonna put a plate in there with a couple studs on it, and a couple countersunk nuts, or countersunk bolts rather, to hold it up in there. So I shouldn't have to weld anything really. Just cut a plate, drill 4 holes, and make it happen. We'll see how that goes though. I do have plenty of room past there for the little bit of room I'm going to need for the spacers to make that happen, but we'll see how that goes. Again, I don't know, I may just weld something in there. Kind of like it permanent. We got a little bit of cancer in this car, but that's it. Just in that spot on both sides. And it goes no further than that so far. So, also an easy fix, and also a very easy car, or a very easy car to restore, because this thing's very solid otherwise. I will pick this back up again tomorrow. I think this is where we're going to end off. Alright YouTube, well, that's it for right now. When we pick back up, we're going to be fitting the rear end in the car. We should be fitting the MSD ignition into the dashboard. I'm going to be showing how I'm going to route all that through the old ECU harness port on the firewall there. I should have mount tabs made for the intercooler down here, as well as most of the front end back on this. And the suspension will be getting worked on. We'll also be going over the rest of the fitment on the supercharger and how the alternator relocation has worked out physically inside the car so far. And then we're going to be going gangbusters on this engine over here, getting it built and getting it ready to go in this car here. So lots and lots more to come. We are behind the 8-ball hard. I've already talked to Michael, and as much as he wanted to hit that deadline, just was not in the cards. So we pushed it back, hoping for next weekend. Next weekend looks like very solid. I'd like to be street tuning this car come Sunday, but I know how that works. Probably open my mouth a little soon at this point, but for right now it is, hell, what day is it? It's Wednesday. It's the 3rd. So technically I gave myself 3 more days to finish this car. I've got 3 more days worth of work, but I don't want to give it back to him right on the day I just finished the last bolts. I want to be able to road test it. I want to be able to tune it. I want to have to make sure I've gone over all the bolts that I've touched on it, so he's not running and fender bolts are falling out of it on the track. So that's where we're at. Hopefully we'll stay on track, and by next weekend we'll have this thing going. So in the meantime, I'm going to keep videoing, and I'm going to keep bringing you guys content. I'm going to try and get some of this stuff done here tonight, and I will pick back up with you guys sometime tomorrow for our next video. In the meantime, keep the shiny side up.